Hello, and welcome to the Kurz podcast, where we bring you the latest news and insights on the wind industry. I want to take this moment to express my sincere gratitude to Jay Austin, Vice President of Kurz for entrusting the Kurz podcast to me. His encouragement and his mentorship have been of great value, helping me to step into this new role. I look forward to continuing the legacy of the Kurz podcast and hopefully taking it to new heights. Today, we're going to be talking about oil filters. And with our special guest, Taylor Coleman, hopefully you're going to learn something. Taylor, thanks for being here today. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob. It'll be a good time.
All right. Taylor, can you tell us, let's start off by tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. How'd you get involved in the wind industry?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I work for Wanhe Filtration. I'm the director of business development, and I run the business strategy and business development portion here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been an interesting journey getting here through my career. But I got started in wind. It's so funny, Rob. I had just gotten off of some active duty time with the Army, and I had a girlfriend at the time who started going to school several hours away from where I lived. And so I looked at a community college there near where she was. I was going to get into radiology or who knows, something that's totally not a good fit. And my dad shows me this brochure for a wind energy school, brand new, that was opening up. And I thought, that's more my speed. And so I was in the first class at this wind school, and we built a GE 1.5, and it was this big profound introduction experience. And then all of my friends went off and became wind technicians, and I had no idea what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drove all the way to Dallas. I live in Albuquerque. I drove all the way to Dallas, and I snuck into a trade show, the AWIA trade show. I snuck in with a handful of resumes, and I started handing them out all over the place. And young Taylor Coleman, the recent wind school graduate, and I actually ended up getting a call back from a filter company, and it's been just a fantastic journey ever since.
Well, that's amazing. And the funny thing is I think a lot of people within the wind industry, they maybe they come from a secondary industry, not necessarily wind, but they have some sort of mechanical background or filter background or oil background or whatever it may be, electrical, right? But somehow they find a way that touch point between the two industries, hits them and oh, I could jump over to that place, in wind industry. And we have a lot of stories like that, where, hey, I was an electrician or I was a mechanical, fabricator or something. And so they come over and they find that they really love the environment. And so they stick around. And so it's great to hear that, somewhat of the similar principle here. You're looking for something as you're coming out of the military. That's cool. I've heard a lot of people do come from the military and join the wind industry. And I love meeting those people too. So, moving on, can you tell me something about Wanhe? How's it evolved from where it's at now to where it was? Kind of what role is the Wanhe filtration going to be playing in the wind industry?
Sure. Yeah. So the company was started by a family in China. Mrs. Xu is the president of the company, and about 24 years ago, she started a company. The way she tells it, with the intention of establishing some healthcare for herself and her family.
All right.
I don't know, but the industry that Wanhe China found was longwall coal mining. That's big automated underground machines shearing off coal, and Wanhe ended up making a real name for themselves in the Eastern European and Asian markets, selling products for coal mining. And I mean, little tiny filters that are backup filters for solenoids, and big systems to filter the emulsion fluid that's used to power underground roof supports, and a very wide array of products have come from that initial push into that industry. And maybe 7 or 8 years ago, Wanhe, China started looking at the wind industry as a real good, viable industry for them to branch out their product line because of hydraulic filters
Yeah.
and gearbox oil filters, products like that. And so they started fleshing out that product line for themselves. And in 2017, the general manager of the company there recruited one of our teammates, David, here in the US, to establish a US branch. And it was kind of, I think, sort of a dream of the company at the time to start doing business in North America. And David had some struggles early on being a Chinese guy operating in the US. There are culture and language differences,
Oh yeah.
and he ended up recruiting me. He set out a lot of feelers, and at the time, I had international business experience and wind energy oil filtration experience, and some teaching experience. I had a lot of things that I think the company was looking for, and so I was brought in as a project manager to get Wanhe Filtration ready for the AWIA trade show at the time. And that's really all it was. Hey, we're going to do this trade show. We need
Yeah.
somebody who can help us get ready, make some contacts, do the thing. And I tell you what, it ended up being a less than smashing success early on because uh, I feel like as an unknown company, especially an Asian company, we were met with a lot of skepticism and a lot of
Hmm.
just the usual unknown vibes. But
Right.
since then, we really have grown and made a splash in the industry by providing excellent products at prices that I think the industry really needed.
That's awesome. And one of the things I love about what you just said is, it's an international company, right? And when I joined Wind myself, one of the things I quickly found out was that this is not just a local or United States or an English speaking country type industry. This is worldwide, and you get to touch
Mhm.
so many different people, so many different cultures. I really love the fact that we work with parts of China, we work with parts of Europe, and I love that it brings it all together. And even though it's so worldwide, it still feels like really small, because I've been to Clean Power also, and there's just so many people like, oh, hey, I know you. Hey, I've talked with you on the phone, or oh, you know them. So I love that
Right.
aspect of it, that it's small and tribal, but yet still large on a grand scale. So
Sure.
that's great to hear about Wanhe's success in moving into the United States, and how they've grown within the Chinese market too. I salute your leaders and the efforts that they have made. So, let's move into probably one of the topics that everybody wants to really learn about is your actual filter itself. Um, First off, just in case there's people who may or may not know much about filtration, can you tell us the importance of, and kind of guide us on what we should be thinking? What is the importance of the oil filter within the wind turbine?
Yeah. Yeah. So in general principles, the when looking at a wind turbine from the outside, you see three big blades turning around, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of people at this point know that that wind turbines are designed to produce electricity.
Right.
Although we've all heard the stories of, can you turn off those fans? It's windy, right? But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think I think most people at this point understand they're generating electricity. But the way
Right.
that's done is that the big rotor, the three blades, is ultimately spinning a big generator that's
Hmm.
up in the top of the wind turbine,
Right.
and the generator turns a whole lot faster than those blades do.
Mm-hmm.
And between those then is a gearbox that is stepping up the RPMs, the speed of the rotation, to a useful, meaningful speed where you can start generating that electricity.
Right.
So the challenge with any mechanical drive system like a gearbox
Mm-hmm.
is that the system itself has gears and bearings and lots of components inside, shafts and components that are turning relative to each other, gear
Right.
teeth that are meshing and bearings that are rolling. Everything needs oil.
Right.
So up in that gearbox, then there's how tens of gallons of real heavy maple syrupy thick gear oil that's lubricating all those components, separating
Yeah.
gear teeth and giving an oil film for the bearings to ride on. So all of that oil that's being circulated and sprayed right into gear teeth and so on needs to be filtered. It
Right.
needs to be clean. You know, Rob, it's really cool. The gear teeth where they're pushing together, sometimes that oil film thickness is squeezed down to a microscopically thin layer of oil where even the smallest pieces of dirt or debris can actually cause damage to those gear faces and the surfaces of those bearings.
Mm-hmm.
And so filtering that oil to a tight enough or through a tight enough media, filtering the oil to the cleanest level possible is the goal, because we want the gearboxes and its sensitive components to last as long as they can.
Right.
So all of the oil in that gearbox that's being run through all the different components needs to be filtered. So our filters are integrated into a lubrication system that's transporting the oil, cooling it, cleaning it, recirculating it, and by having filters that are changed and maintained, we're allowing that oil to be as clean as possible so that the gearboxes can reach their maximum lifespan.
That's awesome. Awesome. I mean, I kind of see what you're saying here. Just like a car, you want that good clean oil, so nothing's rubbing on each other. I get it. And what kind of how do you ensure that those oil filters are kind of effective in capturing those contaminants? And what kind of contaminants do you maybe oftentimes see that are some of the biggest troubles?
Yeah. So the filters that we supply are made with the highest quality filter media that we can use. The idea is that the filter media, which is the actual what you may see as the cloth or fabric part
Mm-hmm.
of the filter, that's the part that the oil passes through, and you can think of it like a microscopic net in a way. It's very microscopic fiberglass fibers that are layered over each other, and we've created this lattice that can be made at very controlled tolerances to catch down to certain sizes of particles. So for us, one of the important things when selecting the filter media that we want to use in a particular filter is testing it.
Mm-hmm.
Testing. We have really high tech and expensive machines that we use to test. There are a lot of standards in the organization of filtration tribology, a lot of standards that are used to guide that testing, where we make sure that we're meeting all standards and using the proper procedures to test. So our equipment is what we use to ensure that all of our filter media is performing to its very, very highest level.
Awesome. And all that. It sounds to me like you have a pretty really good kind of scientific lab set up to do all that over either in China, or is that in the United States?
So that one's in China. All of our manufacturing takes place there. Here in the U.S., we're sales and distribution and marketing and some product management.
Huh.
On the Chinese side, we have we're essentially assembling in China And some of our filter components are made there too. The glass resin caps that are used, it's in glass filled nylon, and
Okay.
the wire bales that are the handles to make the filters easier to
Oh, okay.
change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then our filter media, we can source that from companies, say in Germany or in Sweden. There's some companies around where we found the very best performing filter media in the world. And so by assembling our filters in China, we're saving some cost while providing really some of the best filters in the world.
There you go. Well, yeah. Yeah. I've seen them in action too, so they definitely work great. So so
Well,
and I've heard great reports back too from people who have had them. So that's awesome. Hey, in a part like when you talk about filters, one of the things that comes to mind is the regular maintenance cycles that we have on wind farms. So like the semi-annuals and the annual maintenances. Part of that regular maintenance means that you're swapping these filters out either once or twice a year, and that's something that they decide at the engineering level at independent wind operators. What advice would you have for these wind farms when maintaining these filters uh, for their farms?
You know, the thing we see the most often is that people aren't changing their filters often enough.
Hmm.
Most of the wind farms that we encounter are in dusty places, West Texas,
Right.
for example,
Okay.
and the dirt load and the oil in the gearboxes can really be pretty high. And by keeping filters changed, by keeping fresh filter media, cleaning your oil all the time, you can ensure the best life of your gearbox through the cleanest oil possible.
Right.
So on the site level, keeping those filters changed and buying the very best you can is really important. We see also pretty frequently that some sites, some wind farms may be a little bit more cost driven, and they've bought filters that aren't necessarily of the highest performance with the intention of saving operational cost. I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the result of that often is that the oil is not clean enough,
Right.
and there sometimes is some premature bearing and gear wear as a result.
Yeah, we've seen those type of secondary. I call them like a secondary cost that come because of using, maybe not the correct part for the turbine, in the sense of maybe where it's at regionally because of contaminants and whatnot. So
Sure.
here's a question that I probably didn't put forth to you, but 5 micron, 10 micron. I've heard it a lot between the companies. I want 5, I want 10. Tell me what's your opinion?
With filters, there really is a balance between back pressure and your flow, right? You're squeezing this maple syrupy thick oil through that tight fiberglass media at sometimes a fairly high flow rate. And so as you start to make that fiberglass lattice small enough to filter out a 5 micron particle, keeping in mind that's very small. Most bacteria are around 3 microns, and a red blood cell is like 8 microns, right?
Okay.
These are very, very small
Right.
particles, and so your lattice then is very small as well. Well, the result there is that trying to shove that gear oil through that tight of a lattice can be a challenge. And then you start calculating surface area and viscosities, and it's math. Your math is really on point, right? Engineering filters. So 5 or 10 micron. Well, the reality is that the smaller the particles you can filter, the more of them overall you're going to catch in the system.
Hmm.
A 10 micron filter is designed to catch a certain percentage of the filter of the particles in the oil down to 10 microns.
Okay.
And then a 5 micron filter is going to continue to catch all of the particles, or say, a certain percentage of the particles down to that 5 micron size.
Right.
Well, are you ultimately catching more particles? Well, sure. But here's an interesting idea. When you have that smaller sized filter media, you're catching more and more particles, sure, but you continue to have that thick oil being rammed through that filter media. And as you start to reach the end of your service cycle, say 6 months is when you want to change your filter. Well, your filters are a little fuller now. They're
Right.
a little more restrictive of that flow, but that flow is still trying to go through there. And a lot of times it will push out particles that you've already caught.
Okay.
So there again, you start to look at the balance of surface area and flow rate and particle size. So if you have a big enough filter,
Right.
5 micron is absolutely the way to go. If you're
Okay.
using a smaller sized filter that may be sometimes a little bit small for your application, as we see with some older turbines, uh, 10 micron probably is the way to go.
Okay. All right. Great. I mean, because honestly, that is a big question that I get a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Or it just depends on like, hey, we can get tens faster than fives, because fives aren't ordered as normally as some other of the other size filters. So I'm glad you answered that, put that to rest for us. So now I've heard through the grapevine that you had a hand in maybe designing something filter that kind of made it easier to change up towers.
You know what? I'm glad you heard that. I'm very proud of it actually. So it's so funny. There's we were just talking about the size of filters
Uh-huh.
and how your overall surface area starts to increase your filterability. And uh, there's a particular let's see, a company that designed a lubrication system that we
Hmm.
often see on especially GE platform wind turbines
Hmm.
called Kurz, and uh, they've been using a three-piece filter for a long time. And so the way it
Hmm.
works is you buy this filter and you have two pieces, right? You have the
Right.
lower piece and the top piece, and then the third piece in the middle is this soda can shaped bypass valve that
Right.
it's an emergency bypass valve. If your filter is plugged up, it allows some of the excess oil to escape and move by the valve. It's a
Hmm.
safety feature. But when installing this filter, you pull out the old one. It's gross, it's oily, and you take the two pieces apart and the valve is reusable. So now the expectation is you take this valve and you install it between the two pieces of your new filter as well. And you install them
Okay.
together, and you've had to order now two different filter pieces, the top piece and the bottom piece, reuse the
Right.
valve. And we've seen where sometimes the valve gets thrown away, technicians don't know what's going on, and then we don't have a valve at all. And
Right.
it's just
Right.
it's a hassle in the industry. So uh, working in collaboration with some engineers with one of the bigger operators here in the country, Wanhe designed a filter that fits that application, that fits in that housing, that has an integrated valve into a one-piece filter.
Nice.
So instead of having these three pieces with a reusable piece that sometimes gets thrown away or is very expensive to replace, we have one piece. You buy the filter, you pull out the old one, throw it away, new one goes in, all said and done. Because technician time is valuable.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
as somebody who has worked in wind turbines and changed a lot of filters, anything you can do to save time and effort and mess is very much appreciated. And I really think
Definitely.
that filter design has become very popular in the industry as a result. In fact, we see other companies starting to make them as well, because thinking of technicians and thinking of saving time and money, it's a big deal. And so I'm
Yeah.
actually kind
Yeah.
of proud of it. It's like, oh
Definitely.
yeah, look, I
Well,
I did it.
and you should be, and I would also think that the design of just like one solid piece instead of three pieces that, whatever, that maybe a leak or could come apart depending on how they're installed and stuff, so I would
Mhm,
think that one piece would actually be more solid, more structured to go into the filter pot than three
mhm.
pieces.
Rob, there's a lot fewer pieces to go wrong for sure. In that
Mm-hmm.
three-piece
Yeah.
design, everything is sort of held together by tight-fitting O-rings.
Yeah.
And if they're not installed correctly, yeah, absolutely, there can be
Yeah.
problems. I saw one actually where the valve had been installed upside down.
Okay.
So essentially, you have this soda can shaped valve, and it has a flange around the middle of it. And there's a
Okay.
big side and a small side, but
Yeah.
I saw it installed backwards.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you're not allowing any bypass at all if your filter is clogged, and it can lead to problems with the filter. So, it just kind of takes some of the human error out of it,
Right. Right.
along with
Okay.
making the whole thing more reliable.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like, and I've seen this filter too myself. Quality piece of equipment. So and we've gotten it out there to a number of customers, and we hope to continue to do that too. Get the word out on that. Um, so I appreciate all that technical advice that you brought to the table for us. Now I need you to tell me and tell the people out there, why should customers choose Wanhe over other comparable brands? What
Oh,
what what's what's
Rob,
what's the value add here for people?
really putting me on the spot.
I
Well,
That's all right.
well, I tell you what. Lately, with everything that's been going on in the world in the last few years,
Mm-hmm.
supply chains have gotten notoriously unreliable, and lead
Right.
times have
Oh
gotten
yeah.
just unusable.
Right.
So here at Wanhe, we're making great strides toward increasing our availability and our inventory. We have warehouses here in the U.S. where we've made a goal this year of increasing our inventory by around 30%,
Mm-hmm.
and for next year we're looking at even more. The idea is that from a business perspective, people often buy the filters they can get, but I think overall in the industry, keeping the industry going and keeping wind farms maintained, and earlier I talked about changing filters. That's very
Mm-hmm.
important. You have to keep your filters changed. People try and
Yeah.
stretch the most life out of them.
Right.
If you're not changing them, especially because say you can't get them, that tends to become a more expensive problem down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're increasing our availability in our inventory here because we want people to be able to buy our filters.
Yeah.
That's important. And then, honestly, we have the ability to produce filters with a higher grade of filter media, a better
Right.
functional portion of the filter
Mm-hmm.
at a cost that's a little bit more approachable. There are some cases with some companies where, in order to produce a filter with very top-notch media, they're going to be expensive filters, and that's great. Cadillac filters, they perform great, but at Wanhe, we're able to produce that same Cadillac filter without breaking the bank.
Right.
And I feel like we're lending that to the industry, lending a benefit to the industry because operational costs can be
Right.
just that much lower.
Oh yeah, definitely. So let me get this straight. You're telling me that Wanhe's providing a quality filter, a filter that is a great price with a great lead time. Is that
That's the
correct?
goal.
That's
Yeah.
the goal, right?
Is that
Okay,
the
so
trifecta, Rob?
that's the trifecta right there. So
There it is.
so that's definitely what I think everybody wants to hear and see, is that, hey, those three things are very important to a lot of people. So you heard it here, so so to speak. So um lastly, one thing I love to hear your thoughts on is, what is one pain point that you've heard from maybe some end users. I'm sure you've kind of had your skin in the game here with some end users, that you'd like to dispel and correct when it comes to oil filtration or oil filters.
Well, you and I were talking about smaller filtration, 5
Mhm.
versus 10 micron,
Yeah.
and there are other filtration methods that filter even smaller than that. And one thing in the industry that I've encountered is the idea of filtering out oil additives. Additives are added to your oil to enhance existing properties or to add
Yeah.
new properties to the oil other than just the oil film produced by the viscosity of the oil. You have all kinds of additives, especially in gear oil, that help protect those metal surfaces. And one school of thought is that filtering smaller, like say a 5 micron or even a 3 micron filter, uh, you start to filter out those additives from your oil. And as a filter guy myself, from however far back, I believe you can never have too much filtration. That's just not possible. And so as your customers are looking at reliability of their machines, they may take on additional filter systems, or they may want to use a much smaller micron filter, say a 5 micron filter. And it's important to know that modern oils are not having their additives stripped out of them. They're chemically soluble. Back in Rob, in the days of yore, old oils had solid suspension additives. They
Okay.
had particles of molybdenum and other things that were just kind of suspended in the oil. And
Okay.
we're talking, 50 years ago. And
Right.
it was very common in that case, sure, to filter out those additives because they were 20 micron particles or
Right.
10 micron
Okay.
particles, right? They
Right.
were bigger than what filters were being used. And so they did get stripped out. And I feel like the industry knowledge is just now catching up with the advent of more modern oils. Even in the last 10 years, we're getting to a point now where filters and oil as an interaction are no longer a concern. Let me point out another part of that.
Okay.
Water. A lot of people are really concerned about water content in
Yeah.
their oil. And
Yeah.
I tell you exactly where that comes from. 10 or 15 years ago, the standard oil used in GE was without naming brands, it used a molybdenum disulfide additive that was hygroscopic. It would attract water into the oil, and as a result, would form a sludge that would absolutely fill up a filter in no time.
Okay.
Between dirt and sludge and everything, your filters would not reach the life expectancy they were supposed to. And so then came in desiccant breathers to keep the water out of the
Yep.
oil. And
Yep.
it's this whole systemic chasing your tail situation. But honestly, with better oils, Rob, am I allowed to plug an oil company? Allowed? I tell you
Well,
what, AMSOIL PTN changed the market in a lot of ways. The additives that they use are way different from the older oils, these older design oils, and more people using higher quality oils are now no longer worried about water, no longer worried about sludge. So you can filter smaller, more safely because you're not worried about sludge and stripping out oil additives.
Awesome. That's great information for I'm sure a lot of people. Hey, before we start to wrap up, is there anything else that you think that people need to know or share about Wanhe filtration?
I feel like Wanhe Filtration has, as a fairly young company here in the U.S., has really become a little bit more prolific. I'm seeing our boxes at more and more wind farms, and we're gaining more and more interest. And I really appreciate the help that Kurz has provided in allowing your customers to seek an alternative filter to what they may have been used to in the past, saving cost and adding reliability.
Oh, thank you. We've enjoyed working with you too. So, hey, how can the listeners support you? The work that you're doing here, with Wanhe. How can they find you online?
We have a website, wanhefiltration.com. But honestly, the easiest way, Rob, to reach me or to find our filters is by contacting Kurz. Kurz is
There you
always
go.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah.
Kurz is always out there, always with your ear to the ground and taking care of your customers. And by providing Wanhe filters, that's just one more way that your customers are well taken care of.
And I appreciate that. We do work aggressively with you to make sure that your product is out there, that people have access to it. So yeah, we're definitely happy to continue working with you. So as we continue to roll out more episodes, I want to make sure that we thank the listeners today for joining us on this episode. Hopefully you found it insightful, engaging, because we really appreciate the time that you take to listen to this and listen to the end, So if you enjoyed today's episode, learning about oil filters, learning about how, Wanhe as a company and how you can gain access to it, we invite you to reach out to Kurz Wind, and we'd love to be able to assist you and maybe even bring Taylor on to some calls if you have real technical questions so that he can answer them. He's the smart guy on filters. I also wanted to say, Taylor, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights in the oil filtration, specifically within the wind turbine industry. And it was great having you on this show. I love working with you. You've always
It's my
been so
pleasure.
accommodating. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
You bet, you bet. And everyone out there, if you've made it this far and you want to get, as we roll out more episodes to the Kurz Wind podcast, please subscribe, like, on whichever platform that you happen to be listening to us on. We're rolling in a new series here with a new host, hopefully a lot more new guests. You can hit us up on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Music, Google Play. Any of those, please, reach out. You can also contact us through the Kurz Wind webpage, which is just www.kurzwind.com. Call us, email us. We want to work with you. We want to help everybody on the entire industry meet their needs. Thank you very much for listening to us. Everybody have a great day.